Happy New Year to everyone. We hope we'll have a very, very good 2022 to make up for everything that seemed to have been lost so far. Just a few aspects that we would like you to be aware of. This Q&A session is going to be recorded, and we'll have the video, the recording available for future references in case you may need to go back to it. So during the presentation, please make sure your microphone is muted so that we can listen to the information that Oscar is going to share with us. You can ask questions at all times through the chat or by unmuting yourselves. We will also have a final Q&A at the end of the session where you can address further questions or requests if you haven't found the answer during the presentation. So, Oscar, whenever you are ready, please let us know what this call is all about. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for being here. Today is a question and answer session. So I have a few slides prepared for you just to give you a flavor of what eSSIF-LAB is about. But we presume that you already know a lot about this. Hopefully in 10 minutes or so we can immediately dive into the question and answers. And since we are with a very small group, just speak up, or if you need to wait for someone, just raise your hand if you have a question. And obviously, as Anka said, use the chat whenever useful. Also, Katrilo, very welcome back again. We have one eSSIF-LAB, how would you call this, veteran in our midst. We can also, from the sub-grantee perspective, tell you some things. But anyway, the reason that we're here is eSSIF-LAB. eSSIF-LAB is a program where we have funding, in this case, 53,000 euro for self-sovereign identity projects. So about eSSIF-LAB, I don't think I need to explain a lot about self-sovereign identity to you. So just reiterating the basics, you know, self-sovereign identity is about electronic transactions where you need to have things to prove about yourself, like your identity, the fact that you have a driver's license, a diploma, a certificate of conduct, etc. And this, all of this stuff is going into the SSI wallet. And whenever you need to demonstrate or fill in some forms, then self-sovereign identity will help you fill in the forms, and also for the automatic processing of the things that people have provided. So hopefully I'm not telling you anything new here, but we all know that both from the individual perspective, it speeds up things, it makes things easier, but also from the business perspective, saving time, saving money, having higher levels of assurance, all of them have benefits. So eSSIF-LAB, as mentioned, and I'm going to skip, that one. We have multiple open calls, and now we are talking about the final business-oriented call. So final means that there will be no open calls after this one. So this is the last chance. And business-oriented calls, we also have infrastructure-oriented calls that are about making pieces of open source. For the business-oriented call, the purpose is make something that is viable from a business perspective, either generic SSI functionality or an application based on self-sovereign identity. So the way that we have organized things is, as mentioned in the infrastructure program, which is the green one at the top. We have now 3 groups of sub-grantees. One group has already finished, the second is about to finish, that have delivered a lot of useful open source SSI components. Also the business-oriented call number 1, they have delivered a lot of useful SSI services and products that are commercially available, and they have been collaborating at all different levels, interoperability, integration of components, etc. So currently we are running the second business, we have subgrantees from the second business open call that are actually using components from the others in real world problems, for instance, related to education, diplomas, related to the health sector, related to consent, to have representation for you, or even after that, the organ donation consents. All of these are still running. Okay, I'm going to skip the technical picture. I'm also not telling you about all the subgrantees that we have. Some of you have probably already downloaded our booklet, in which you can see all the subgrantee projects. And depending on what project you are proposing, you are required to use some of the components that have been created before. Okay, more logos, and yet even more logos. So let's go to the contents of this extra business-oriented call. We are targeting small and medium enterprises, not-for-profit organizations, and research organizations. We are looking for business-oriented, so generic and domain-oriented solutions, for instance, in e-government, education technology, and e-health. But other proposals are welcome too. As mentioned, we are talking about a 7-month project of 50K euro. And well, you have already found all the hyperlinks, because otherwise you wouldn't have found us. But anyway, these are the links. So what are we looking for? We have 2 tracks. So if you have probably already looked at the submission page. You have on the left and on the right, you have 2 submission forms. The track number 1 on the left side is about working solutions for a real world domain specific problem in health, government, or education, or a generic business oriented extension to SSFI, to the eSSIF-LAB, so SSI infrastructure, adding features that are not already available. So types of features that we're typically looking for are features that are protecting citizens in some way or another. For instance, protecting the privacy of a citizen, protecting a citizen against coercion, or protecting citizens that are less digital able, that they don't need to share all their login credentials. Anyway, if you have any good ideas, just let us know. These would go into track number 2. So here are even more details about the eligibility criteria. By the way, all these slides will be available afterward. Anka can arrange that. But for the track 1, commercial and sector-specific SSI solutions that leverage previously developed functionalities within the eSSIF-LAB. So you will find a pull-down menu in which you can select, hey, this is the eSSIF-LAB component that I want to build upon, and I'm going to apply it this way. So for instance, we have components for trust infrastructure. We have a lot of SSI wallets. We have solutions for policy management, etc., etc. So please read the brochure and check which are the ones that would be relevant to you. The projects should be about issuing, exchanging, and consumption of self-sovereign identity credentials. Fairly obvious, because the SSI in eSSIF-LAB is for self-sovereign identity. And it should be about SSI assurance communities. So, you know, credentials are being issued. For instance, a university issues a diploma, the driver's license organization, or they provide driver's licenses. However, how are these assurances arranged? So how do verifiers know that they can trust a certain issuer, that an issuer is a real university, the real driver's license organization? For that, you need an SSI assurance community, that is a group of parties that assures that the trust is there. And in your proposal, we ask you to explain what is the way that you are going to organize this assurance. Then for track 2, the generic business SSI components for these, we ask you about your track record. So for instance, have you developed open source components in the SSI domain that have been are well known, that have been contributed to, for instance, Hyperledger, or have you been active in W3C or diff with SSI standards? Are you well known in this area? What you propose should obviously fit within the SSI vision and architecture. It should potentially be scalable and interoperable, and especially for the interoperability, we would like to hear from you. How do you make sure that the thing that you're making will connect to other things? So for instance, do you envision interoperability with the ARIES interoperability profile, for example? We are talking about open source, so we are talking about permissive licenses, for instance, Apache 2, and we are talking about a bit lower technology and investment readiness levels. So the track 1 is about actual applications and the higher technology readiness and investment readiness. Then there are some generic requirements, and Anka can tell you more if there are questions, like you should be in an eligible country in the European Union. We have a deadline, language of English, no conflict of interests, etc. And also one of the criteria is you should not have been eSSIF-LAB subgrantee before. So that is, feel free to work together with previous eSSIF-LAB subgrantees. We are really encouraging that, but at this open call is really for new subgrantees. We also have some minimum quality criteria, which is something that will be checked by an expert panel, building upon one component, issuing and verifying, expertise, etc., etc. You can read them here. You can also read them in the materials. And then we have a whole submission and evaluation process. But I think since I already saw some pop-ups of questions, I think it's time to give the floor to the Q&A. So the one on top was from Tom Kettles. Let me read out loud. Application form section 8, declaration of honor. In this open call, also non-for-profit and RTOs are eligible. So we should delete from the comma. In particular, is an SME / mid-cap. Please explain. Anka, I think this one is for you.
Yes, to answer Tom's question, he is right. The example does not stand here. So you do not need to demonstrate in particular that you are an SME, because as you mentioned, you can be eligible as a non-for-profit or an RTO. So we are going to update. Thank you for letting us know it was an example, but it does not apply in this case. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to the next one, which is from Bill Claxton. I would like to ask if a consortium with one member in Switzerland and one in Singapore would be eligible for eSSIF-LAB grants. Anka, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we only want to have single entities, so no consortia.
This is a call for individual applications for SMEs, non-for-profit or RTO, but individual, they cannot apply within a consortium. And either way, an entity in Thailand wouldn't be eligible.
So just to clarify, if the application comes from the Swiss entity, but work is being done, say, in Singapore, that's not acceptable.
So the applicant, the Swiss company.
Yes. So the applicant is a Swiss company, but they have an alliance or partnership of some kind with a Singapore company, which has a good track record in SSI for 2 years and is actually putting together the proposal on the technical merits. So I wonder whether this application can be considered.
So are you a multi-country organization, or are they a subcontractor?
No, it's not a subcontract relationship. It's a consortium type of relationship. So they basically represent us in Europe. My company, Next ID, is based in Singapore, has been active in the W3C consortium and looking at verifiable credentials and developing applications in the health space for COVID certs, in the academic space for diplomas, and in provenance space for certificates of authenticity for artworks. So we have quite a lot of experience, and we have some very interesting proposal for collaboration with your existing eSSIF technology partners.
Yeah, I know that. The question for us as an eSSIF-LAB consortium
by the way,
is then...
Rix, please introduce yourself as my colleague.
Oh, yeah. My name is Rix Joosten. I'm also from TNO. I'm a close colleague of Oscar van Deventer, and I'm also part of the people that run the eSSIF-LAB consortium, which is, of course, another consortium. Thank you, Oscar, for reminding me. The question for us then really would be, how can we support you, Bill, with the proposals that you have, given that that some actual work is done in Singapore and that you have relations with this Swiss company that would be eligible? How do we advise you to provide a proposal that would qualify? Is that a proper rephrase of your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, Anka or Almu or Oscar, please.
Okay, so strictly from an eligibility point of view, Bill, the consortia is not eligible. So you cannot present an application as a consortium. This is very important. If you decide to go ahead with your Swiss company, which is eligible because Switzerland, I'm also addressing the first question, Switzerland is an associated country, so it is eligible. So if you do decide to apply with an individual entity based in an eligible country, then you will not be able to implement in a consortium. Okay, you will not be able to implement the proposal with your company in Thailand. So the idea here is that the main activities of your proposal have to be implemented by the eligible entity in Europe, in the European associated countries, Horizon 2020, sorry, associated countries or the other member states. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and I respect that. Thank you for answering clearly.
Yeah, and Anka, you had already noticed that Hendra had a similar question. We're from Thailand, but we're going through our partner in Estonia. I think this is exactly the same question, but maybe Hendra can clarify.
Yes, actually it's exactly same with the big bill. With the one of the entity is our partner in Estonia. That's why I asking is eligible for us or no. But the product is actually the features actually already implemented in Thailand.
So this is the same case. Sorry, I got confused. Bill's case was with Singapore, and this is with Thailand, but the situations are very similar. The applying entity has to be an individual entity of the eligible types. It has to be based in one of the eligible countries, and you cannot. You can subcontract, if that would be an option for you. You could subcontract up to 15% of the activities, but it cannot be the main activities of the proposals. Okay, so the core activity of the proposal has to be implemented by the eligible entities team.
Okay, so that means will be implemented in the Estonia, correct?
It has to be executed by the entity from Estonia and the team working in Estonia. And also very important, because I don't know the status, but Bill did mention that the company in Switzerland, Switzerland is like a representative of the company in Singapore. So we are going, even if it's eligible and it goes through the first evaluation process stages, we are going to do an SME formal check, eligibility check, formal and legal check. And if your company is owned by the company in Singapore with more or shares more than 50% of the 25% of the shares are owned by a company outside the eligible countries, then the proposal again will not be eligible.
Oh, got it. Because it's our partner is different, so we not have any like the shares there. So we just only the partnership, technology partnership with them. So I just like want to encourage them to apply for this and for the travel.
That would be great. Estonia is an eligible country, so if they go by the eligibility criteria in the guide, they should be able to present a proposal.
I read the guiding should be able, because it's not from, as you mentioned before, like 50% entity is not from us, it's from really from them, from the Estonia company.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Let's go to the next question, which is from Theas. For track 2 proposal, is it necessary to have a self-sovereign identity solution built over the existing components of eSSIF-LAB, or can we present something built from scratch? Rieks, correct me if I'm wrong, but building from scratch is perfectly fine for new components. Of course, the thing that we want to make sure is that you focus on interoperability, which means that some level of integration is possible, some use of standards, etc. But Rieks, perhaps you can further refine.
Yes, so
all right. Hey, Tejas here. Hello.
Yes, go.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So I was just trying to give a first answer to your question, but maybe you can clarify in more detail what you had in mind.
Yes, exactly. So we were basically trying to bring a solution that is into blockchain and cryptocurrency transaction domain. And I did not see any component that are matching our like requirements. So I was thinking if we could able to or like build something that is from scratch, but it is in the blockchain and cryptocurrency domain. Will that work for this call requirement?
Well, in that case, you need to first explain to me what has your proposal to do with self-sovereign identity, because we are eSSIF-LAB, self-sovereign identity, and we are not a blockchain call. Then you should be with Ledger, for instance. We are not about cryptocurrencies. So what's the relationship with self-sovereign identity?
Yeah, basically we are working on one hardware wallet that requires the transaction to be signed with the SSID credentials of the user. If you generally see the transactions that are signed with hardware wallets are through the hardware specifically. But what we are doing here is like the transactions will be signed with the SSID like contents of the user who is going to handle the cryptocurrency transaction. So that is basically a novelty that we're bringing in the hardware wallet. So it has the SSID component. So that's why I just wanted to ask if we can build something in the cryptocurrency and blockchain domain, and will that work with the call requirement?
I think, yes, again, Rieks, correct me if I'm wrong. As long as as long as we are talking about self-sovereign identity, we're talking about the business transaction, well, check. And we are talking about providing proof. In this case, it's proof of having a hardware wallet and proof of the signature. So that also seems correct. So from this perspective, I don't see major obstacles. Rieks, what do you think?
No, and of course, in the end, I think the important thing is that you look closely to the criteria that are being used for evaluating the proposal and make sure you meet them. And if you do, I think then you stand a reasonable good chance to be selected.
All right. I got my answer. Thank you so much. So we'll propose the solution that is built from scratch, and at the same time, we'll make sure that we have the SSID components integrated to it.
Yeah. Again, make sure you satisfy the criteria for evaluation as set forth in the applicant's guide.
All right. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Our next question is from Tom Kettles again. Can you share a link to the subgrant agreement template? The link is missing on page 19 in the PDF of the guide for applicants. Anka?
I already shared that, Oscar, in this chat, but just for your information, you can find the link in the guides, on the guides page. It's a hyperlink to the subgrant agreement template. You can find it there.
But, apparently there was some broken link or something like that.
In the guide for applicants, we'll check that, but you can still find it on the main microsite page. We'll update the guide if needed.
Yeah. And then another question from Tom, I'll read it out loud. In Horizon 2020, beneficiaries can work with linked third parties. This is not considered subcontracting, Article 14 of the Horizon 2020 grant agreement. Since eSSIF-LAB is a Horizon 2020 finance project, can we also work with linked third parties for the call that we discussed today? Again, for Anka, I guess.
I guess we need to understand better the situation here. If Tom, if you can just explain us a bit more, what kind of relationship is there between the companies you are mentioning?
Yes, sure, I can explain further. So with linked third parties, what is meant is basically, for instance, a group of companies where you have one company on top that is a shareholder in other companies. It owns, for instance, to make it clear, it owns, for instance, 80% of these companies. So there is a clear, it's a clear main owner of these companies. So the companies it owns can basically also participate in the call, and this is not considered subcontracting. And the same is also for non-profit associations like we are. So under Horizon 2020, a linked third party is actually a member of a non-profit association, which means that a member can do some part of the work for the beneficiary. And again, this is not considered subcontracting. So the question is whether this principle of linked third party also applies here.
Okay, so from what I understand so far, first of all, you would need to make sure that you do not surpass the limitation regarding the number of employees, regarding the type of company. Did you ever have to do this type of calculation for other projects and see if you are still within the margins for the SME or small and medium enterprise, the limitations that you need to be?
We did not have to do it for the projects where we are using this concept. So the question is indeed also, if we have to calculate it, do we have to make an addition then of the staff of all the members that would participate, or is each member considered individually? Is the ISME criteria applied individually to each of the members that would contribute?
If it's an individual company and they abide by the eligibility criteria regarding the dimension of the company, then we will have to further analyze it during the legal and the formal check if the proposal gets to that stage, to get the best understanding of the situation. Either way, we would like to mention here that the rules of cascade funding, which is our case, are a bit different from the Horizon 2020 rules. So we are going to, we do need to go by those. It's a very, very specific case. I will have to further consult it with our legal department and get back to you.
Yes, thank you. We had already entered that question also, I
Yes,
think.
we know. We already sent it to our legal department. We are waiting for their feedback in order for us to be able to provide you with a very specific answer to a very specific situation, as I said, and we'll do that within a decent time frame, so that you have all the time necessary to complete the application in case it's a positive answer on our side.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone else is also interested in the answer, then please say so or send Anka a mail or Oscar or me so that we can make sure you get the answer as well.
Yes, and as I said, we'll do that at the earliest convenience, you know, Christmas time and the holidays, and we did try to track someone from legal as soon as possible. We apologize for the delay, but we are going to get back to you within the next couple of days.
So the bottom question at my chat is now from Sharanya. We are a European entity. However, the target population is not limited to European citizens. Is this acceptable? Could you clarify this question? Because I'm not sure whether I understand.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. So we're a European entity and we're working with humanitarian organizations that are also European entities. Of course, the idea would be so we've developed a decentralized identity solution with these humanitarian organizations. And of course, the idea is that while this is applicable also to individuals within the European Union and Horizon 2020 countries, the population that it's eventually targeting may go beyond European citizens to include the areas of activity of these humanitarian organizations, for instance, in the Middle East and North Africa region, but also Sub-Saharan Africa. So we're just wondering if this is something that's sort of exclusively meant to have European citizens as the target, or is it okay to develop something that is, of course, meant for broader use as well?
Well, we would be very happy to have you, and since you're a European entity, yes, you're welcome. And if you have customers outside of the European Union, that's even better.
All right.
So in that sense, I think everything sounds fine. And at this moment, we do not yet have subgrantees in the humanitarian area yet in eSSIF-LAB. So also from that perspective, it would be very interesting to have you.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your answer.
And I see a new one, Pascal Mott. Thank you for the presentation. Sorry for going back on consortiums. Can we present a proposal as a consortium of your EU company and EU citizens? And perhaps, Pascal, you can clarify your situation, then Anka can respond.
Hello, thank you. I'm working on a project, on side project as an open source project, and I'm connected to a company that would like to go forth with me on a SSI solution. So, don't know how to manage that, and if the application is possible. The point would be to create an SSI agent.
So Anka, actually here we are talking, it seems to be that we're talking about a group of individuals, correct?
A group of individuals and a company also. So like it would be a shared position like.
Again, here we have to insist on the fact that this call is open for individual applications from SMEs, non-for-profit, or RTOs. So what you're proposing is could have worked in a previous call because we have accepted teams of individuals in other calls, but not this one here. It will have to be an individual entity, whatever form you decide to embrace, but it has to be an SME, non-for-profit or RTO.
Okay, thanks.
No problem, thank you.
And then I notice that Tom is still struggling with the hyperlinks. So
Yeah.
Anka, this is something that you need to figure out with, and please make sure that you contact Tom that all our hyperlinks are ones that work.
Sure. I apologize for that. I don't get the error you are mentioning, but we are going to look further into it.
I also get the error.
Okay, so I'll have to go to my IT because my capabilities here are exceeded. Thank you for letting us know, and apologies for the mistake. But Tom also tells us that if you go to the guides page, you can access the link from there and you will have the sub-grant agreement template. Either way, we are going to fix it.
So I don't see any further questions in the chat. If anyone has any further questions, just speak up now.
Hi, Oscar. My name is Gene Quinn, and
Hi.
how are you today? Sorry for being tardy. I represent a travel and hospitality special interest group within the Decentralized Identity Foundation, where we are represented by a gentleman by the name of Nick Price, who is chairman of our SIG. And I am also a member of the Trust Over IP not-for-profit, both those organizations organized under the Linux Foundation model. We have developed a number of use cases around self-sovereign ID based completely on the framework, the WC3 framework, which the DIF is working with. And these use cases represent addressing COVID and other types of issues that have surfaced in the last 2 years. We are very much interested in running events, soliciting developers from around the world through entities that are members of these SIGs from European area companies who are also sending representatives to our SIG. And these events would be like ideation hackathons or coded hackathons based on the eSSIF protocols that are being developed. Now, I'm not a developer or a particularly technical representative. I'm here as a co-organizer of this to communicate this to the global travel, tourism, and hospitality industry. And we are a not-for-profit as part of DIF and part of Trust Over IP. And I just wanted to make sure that those affiliations with those two groups, with specific companies based in the EU zone, would be representative for us to make application for funding.
Well, first of all, we know Trust Over IP and DIF very well. We have a liaison relationship with DIF, where actually eSSIF-LAB is transferring some of our pre-standardization work to DIF. As for Trust Over IP, various parties are contributing. Rick Joost is actually chairman of one of the groups there. However, I'm not really sure what is your actual question.
Well, the question is, would it be valid to submit a proposal with a company that is affiliated with our special interest group on behalf of the global travel, tourism, and hospitality industry?
Well, the on behalf part, I'm not sure about. Anka, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as the party that's making the application is a European party, then you're good.
Yes, if it is one of the, if it is based in one of the eligible countries, yes. But I'm more confused about the affiliated part. What do you mean?
Well, if you probably need to know a little more deeply about how the DIF is organized. There are special interest groups of members of DIF and companies sending delegates to those special interest groups in the areas of healthcare, education, fintech, and now hospitality and travel. And the purpose of those groups is to feed the protocol developers at DIF and Trust over IP business solutions that could be underpinned by the Web3 technology that's being developed out on the blockchain with the protocols that DIF is supervising development of. So it's a network of relationships, because it's an interconnected industry being travel, that is not industry specific. It is sector specific: travel, tourism, and hospitality. So, for example, we would be looking to run hackathons to develop solutions based on the eSSIF protocols from developers who are donating their time to create those solutions and provide incentives for them to do so. So it's basically a large science fair promoting the eSSIF protocols.
Oscar, I'm not quite sure I understand, but it does remind me to what Gattaca is doing with DIF.
Well, the thing that Gattaca is doing, so within eSSIF-LAB, we are developing a set of protocols for presentation exchange and issuer resolution and some more. The pre-standardization has been happening in eSSIF-LAB, where we have done some specification writing, some interrupt testing, and now we are transferring the work to DIF to make it available for a wider community and also get the wider community involved. And so, yes, we are talking with DIF about this. As for eligibility, you're talking about the travel and leisure sector. Anka, for track 1, we said eGov, eHealth, and education.
EdTech, yeah.
But what I hear from Jean is what they're talking about is actually more generic functionality. So that could be eligible for track number 2, correct?
Exactly. This is what we are thinking as well. It could be eligible under track number 2, as long as, if I'm guessing correctly, or if I understood correctly, we are talking about the non-for-profit, and it could be, if it's based in one of the eligible countries and it complies with the eligibility criteria of the type of applicant, I think the rest of the content of the solution or of the proposal can be further understood during the evaluation process.
If I may, we were thinking precisely of track 2 with the idea that whatever was developed would be transparent in its nature and shared publicly in every way through every organization that these not-for-profits touch, whether it's Trust over IP or eSSIF or DIF, or I'm actually here. My day job is chairman and co-founder of Travel Scrum Inc., which is a US-based not-for-profit. But because of this consortium of travel companies that is operating on a global basis with affiliations throughout Europe, we thought it might be advantageous to align ourselves with this particular grant-making process so that we could advance the ball and create a laboratory within the laboratory itself, within the SF laboratory. So I've run 37 commercial hackathons in a company called T-News some years ago across the world in the API economy, which is pre-blockchain, of course. It was more Web 2 than Web 3. So we've been talking about how to get the word out about, SF technology, broad-based web frameworks organized under sort of Linux rules of openness, and this would be a great way to educate the world and several different industries, healthcare, fintech, travel and tourism, about the work going on within eSSIF. So it's all bent towards this particular grant writing process for this particular application that eSSIF has made available.
You mentioned that you have a lot of contacts also in Europe. So you have received our invitation, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So yes, if you could forward the invitation to apply for an eSSIF-LAB grant also to your European stakeholders, that would be much appreciated.
That's great. We're talking about companies like Condatis and Evanim, and
well,
now part of Avast.
Evanim is already an eSSIF-LAB subgrantee, so they are excluded from the present call.
Okay, so we'll exclude them from our credentials list. But there are a number of companies that we're working on.
Yes, please forward our invitation and email us if you need to have a nicely formulated email. But yes, please let people know.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the possibility of success.
So we still have a few minutes left. Just checking any further questions. If not, you can always send questions through the Funding in the Box portal or via email. So if there's any further questions, don't forget the deadline is the 15th of January, so you still have 10 days. And I will be really looking forward to receiving your applications.
Yes, and I would like to add to that, Oscar, again, I think it's the third time I'm saying it, but it is important because we have seen in earlier calls that applicants do not always read these criteria by which the proposals are judged. And if you do not do that, then that really degrades your potential of being funded. You really need to look into that to make sure you satisfy these criteria.
Thank you, Rix, for that those final words of wisdom. Okay, I wish everyone a great day and looking forward to your applications. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Oscar. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.